Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGeek webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is Solving People and Performance Puzzle in Agile Teams. And this is the 13th session of Project Management Leadership Series. Our guest speaker today is Mr. Rathina Kumar Balasubramaniam, Head Agile Practice SAPCONS. Mr. Rathina Kumar is an expert in the field of Agile project management. As one of the leading Agile coaches and trainers in India, he helps organizations to adopt agility, transition to Agile methodologies, and coach Scrum Masters. With more than 15 years of rich experience in traditional and Agile project management practices at organizations like Infosys Limited, Accelerator Software Solutions, Voltec India, he has coached and trained hundreds of project practitioners in agile methodologies. He has authored several white papers and presented insights on agile in several national and international project management conferences. He has been invited as a speaker for several organizations and PMI forums. He is a certified PMP, a PMI ACP, that is a PMI Agile Certified Practitioner, and a Certified Scrum Master. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker, Mr. Rathina. Over to you, Mr. Rathina.
Thank you very much, Mohini. Hi, everyone. Very good afternoon. This is Rathina. I would like to thank the organizers, the PMI and the TechGeek community for providing a wonderful opportunity to talk about project management to the project management communities. I would like to welcome all of you in this wonderful evening, and we'll begin with a quick introduction. From my perspective, I would like to introduce myself with my vision, which is to help enterprises to build agility in their culture. Today's organization need to become agile, and they have to become agile at enterprise level, not just at the team level. So I help organizations to build agility in their culture. That is part of my vision. The other part of my vision is to help people, project managers, project team members, to find freedom and joy in their work through the agile way. And I'm spearheading the effort as head of agile practice at SAPCONS. SAPCONS is a leader and pioneer in project management education in India. So with that introduction, let's begin. I have 5-point agenda today. Point number 1, people and performance puzzle. Here I would like to define what I call people and performance puzzle and why I call it a puzzle, and we'd like to draw a boundary and the scope for our discussion. Number 2, agile teams, in particular, why this puzzle is much more challenging in agile teams. Number 3, the characteristics of agile teams. The reason why agile teams are different from the other teams or traditional teams is because of some of the characteristics. So I'm going to pick up some of the key characteristics of agile teams here, followed by the challenges in building agile teams. And number 5, finally, I would like to leave you with good practices in building agile teams and my perspective about solving people and performance puzzle. So let's start with the first agenda, people and performance puzzle. You can see an illustrative chart here on the screen, which is a live example. not to the scale, but it's good enough to convey the message. This is one of my experiences when I was leading a product development team. And there are two teams. One of the team is the development team, the other team is a QA or the testing team. And the chart shows two important data points, the bug arrival rate and the bug fix rate. Bug arrival rates are data coming from the QA team, and bug fix rate is data coming from the development team. As you can see, these two lines or these two curves are diverging. And I'm sure all of you may be thinking it's a cause of concern, but not quite. Both the teams, both the development team and the testing team, are very happy with this data, and they are very comfortable with this data. It's only a matter of concern for one person, which is the project manager. And this is a data over a period of 4 cycles, 4 test cycles. What is going on here, and why people are still okay without even worrying about widening gap between bug arrival and bug fixing? The reason is there is another data point which is called not a bug data point. When a bug is raised by a testing team, the development team have two options. One, they can look at the bug and say yes, it is a bug, and go ahead and fix it. Or they can say it is not a bug. Either it is misunderstood by the testing team or it is outside the scope of the project. In whichever case, it is called not a bug scenario. Actually, many of us, many of you would have gone through a similar scenario, if not the same scenario, and a lot of us know how to manage these kind of issues in projects, and we would have come up with many solutions to these kind of issues, and how to arrest the not a bug scenario and all those things. But my question is, why this happens? If you think that in another scenario, in another project, the same situation will appear, yes, it will reappear, maybe in a different form. That is why I call it as people and performance puzzle. It is a puzzle because you don't have one standard solution. It's a puzzle which does not have same solution working all the places. A solution that works today may not be working tomorrow. The same solution that works in one team may not work elsewhere. That is why it is very different kind of puzzle, and this is called people and performance puzzle. How easy or difficult it is to understand people and the way they perform is a real puzzle. That's the scope of today's discussion. And I would like to take the help of Dr. Ilya Goldratt to understand from where this scenario comes. He said in one of his popular books, "Tell me how you measure me, and I will tell you how I will behave." Ilya Goldratt is one of the pioneer business management guru. He has originated many thought processes, including theory of constraints and critical chain methods. And he has written several books which are very popular. In one of the books he says, "Tell me how you measure me, and I will tell you how I will behave." And he goes on to say, if you measure me in an illogical way, do not complain about illogical behavior and obviously illogical results. And that's what Ilya Goldratt said. And how does it connect with the scenario that we have just seen? The secret is this: the development team is measured by the least number of bugs they fix per cycle. The testing team is measured by more number of bugs that they find out. The more the bugs, the bigger or better the performance, and more the bonus. So you can see that both the parties, the development team and the testing team, are comfortable with the scenario because the development team is fixing less and less bugs. Testing team is coming up with more and more bugs. But somewhere in the middle they have an understanding, and that's how things work. And this puzzle can take any shape as you think of in your own situation. But you think the people who are working in these two teams are not working together? I mean, my experience is it's the other way around. They're actually very good team. Only thing is they're behaving in a certain way to produce the best possible results for them, as Leo Goldratt says. So if we measure people in the wrong way, they will behave in an illogical way, and that's the way it is. So measuring people is one of the pieces of this puzzle. And let's look at some of the other characteristics of how the teams work. Some of the concepts that I'm discussing today is not just applicable to agile teams. In general, it is applicable to any team behavior. But the focus today is more towards agile teams because agile teams have certain special characteristics. So let's go into the agile teams. I would like to start with a quick show of Agile Manifesto. All of us know what is Agile Manifesto. It has 4 philosophies. The very first philosophy is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And individuals and interactions is part of our puzzle, the people part of the puzzle. Individuals and interactions, the people and their conversations are more important for agile teams. And this philosophy has been extended further as part of agile principles. If you look at the 12 agile principles that follow the Agile Manifesto, you will see various references to these people and performance aspects. Let's look at the people aspects of the agile principles. Out of the 12 principles, I picked up 4 which are relevant to people and performance. The first principle says build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. That's one of the principles. There's another principle which says the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. And these two are talking about people and motivation levels and the trust within the team and the kind of support they need to do their job and the kind of information sharing, face-to-face conversation. So this is agile principle as far as people is concerned. Let's look at the performance aspects of agile principle. All of us know agile principles are part of the Agile Manifesto. It comes behind the Agile Manifesto, and all the agilists follow the Agile Manifesto and agile principles. But then these 2 principles that you see on the screen are to do with the performance aspects. Agile processes promote sustainable development. What we call sustainable is the sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. That means an agile team should be able to develop, continue to work in the same pace forever, indefinitely. That is sustainable. And the second part is, there is another principle which says simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. If you think a little deeper into this principle, simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. You will realize without this principle, the sustainable development is not possible. Only when you eliminate the waste, only when you maximize the amount of work not required to be done, do only the required amount of work, the simplicity aspect of it, the sustainable development is possible. So basically there are at least 4 principles which talks about people and the performance. Typically it talks about motivated individuals in a trust environment, having a face-to-face conversation, and we talk about sustainable development and simplicity. These are the Agile Manifesto and Agile Principles perspective. Now let's look at some of the statistics. In one of their articles written for Harvard Business Review in 2005, Mike and Richard said the average team achieves only 63% of their objectives of their strategic plans, which means there is 37% of the objectives are not met, either not met, sometimes not even started. So that's a big number, 37%, and this is a very conservative number. In fact, in many teams, it may be as high as 50%. But if you look at, this is the average team achievement for all the teams. But if you look at the data for Agile teams, you will realize that Agile teams deliver superlative results. And data says that 120% improvement in productivity and so on and so forth. But people may ask how an Agile team can deliver superlative results. Actually, the better question would be why they deliver. If you understand the why part of it, we can actually answer the how part of it. So let's go a little more into details about what an Agile team is and what are their composition. Basics. First, an Agile team consists of three sets of roles: a customer, an Agile coach, and the development team. If you are in a Scrum environment, you would call them product owner, a Scrum master, and the development team, respectively. Typically, Agile teams are small in size, basically between 3 to 9 members. That's the team size we are looking at. 3 to 9 member team with a customer and an Agile coach, and they have certain characteristics. And there are many characteristics, but I just picked these two items: self-organizing and cross-functional, because these two are big ticket items. These two things are big guys. Self-organizing characteristic and the cross-functional characteristic of Agile teams. The small team of 3 to 9 people are self-organizing and they are cross-functional, and they are Agile teams. What is self-organizing teams? A self-organizing team is self-directed, they are empowered, and they are accountable. Self-directed means they decide how they achieve the goals of the team, and they don't need someone to command them. They don't need somebody to manage them. Basically, they can manage themselves, they can chart their own path, they can create their own way of doing things and dealing with things and come up with the expected results. They are self-directed and they are empowered. They are autonomous. They have the decision-making capacity. They have the empowerment to decide how to go about solving their problem, how to go about creating the product that they are set out to create. And obviously, with empowerment comes accountability. We say that with power comes responsibility. Here, with empowerment comes accountability. Self-organizing teams are accountable for what they deliver. The one big difference you would have noticed by now in an Agile team vis-a-vis a non-Agile team is the accountability. The team accountability is one big difference here. In a traditional team, the accountability lies with a project manager or somebody who is the reporting manager of the team, which is not the case here. The team is accountable for the results that they deliver. So that's the self-organizing part of it. What about the cross-functional aspect of the team? A cross-functional team consists of different functional expertise. It comprises of people that have all the skills and the competencies required to deliver the job, and finally they are committed to a common goal. And then we can call this team as a cross-functional team. Why a cross-functional team is important? Because if the team is not committed to a common goal, I don't think we'll be achieving any goal. So when there is a team which is committed to a common goal, and within the team we have all the expertise, all the skills and competencies of all the functional requirements, the team can come together and solve any problem. And they have everything within their capacity to deliver. And this team is called cross-functional team. Now let's go back and look at what is an Agile team. We said that the big two characteristics of an agile team is number one, self-organizing, and number two, cross-functional team. Self-organizing team is self-directed, empowered, and accountable. Cross-functional team have different functional expertise, have all the skills and competence to deliver the results, and they are committed to a common goal. And that's what we are talking about today. And in these kind of setup, people will have a lot of questions. Who is going to track? Who is going to monitor? Or who is going to report? And the answer is, for all these three questions, is the same. The team is going to do that. The team is going to monitor their progress. The team is going to track their progress. The team is going to report their status. And that's it. Is it possible? Is it a utopian, or is it a practical thing that we are discussing? That's a question that remains to be answered. Let's go a little further. Because with all these questions, there are a lot of misconceptions that come along. There is nothing as powerful as a concept, and there is nothing more dangerous than a misconception. There are many misconceptions around the agile teams. Some of the misconceptions are very dangerous, and they are actually play the spoil sport when it comes to understanding agile teams are. Let's go and take a look at these misconceptions and see how they are incorrect. And once we know that, then we can actually look at the powerful aspects of agile teams. Agile team is not an indisciplined team. On the other hand, agile teams are highly disciplined. They need to be highly disciplined. They have to be committed to a common goal, and if they are going to deliver the results with accountability. There will be a lot of chaos in agile teams, yes, but chaos does not mean indiscipline. And agile teams may not have a project manager. Agile teams may not have a manager within the team. That does not mean that they have a free run. That does not mean that they are disconnected from the organization hierarchy, or does not mean that they are beyond the boundaries of organization. Agile teams are very much within the organization boundaries. They are bound by the organizational policies. They are very much part of the organizational hierarchy. The only difference is there is no manager who directs them within the team, who assigns them the work, because it is done by the team. And third most important thing, an agile team, one of the misconceptions, people feel that agile teams are always under stress. They are completely stressed out. They are burnt out very quickly. And to be honest, agile teams are never under pressure cooker situation. It's very rare that they are under pressure cooker situation. If some team is under a stressful situation, they will not be able to produce sustainable results, which is part of our philosophy, which is part of our principle. So pressure cooker situation is not the norm. It could be, I would say, it is a very rare occasion in an agile team. An agile team can comfortably deliver at a sustainable pace, and they are highly organized, highly disciplined, and they are very much part of the organizational boundaries. So now we have defined what is an agile team is, what are their characteristics, and what an agile team is not. This is pretty much summarizes the agile team structure. And now let's move further and ask a few more questions. What are the challenges in building agile teams? I'm sure these challenges are there in regular teams also, but in agile teams, the enormity of the challenges are completely in a different proposition. It takes a very huge propositions because of the small size of the team and the high intensive collaborative effort that the agile teams are into. Even though there are several challenges, I have just picked up the top 3 challenges from my perspective, which comes and acts as an impediment to build an agile team. Number 1, trust deficit. Number 2, lack of ownership. Number 3, attitude towards conflict. Let's go into detail of each one of them one at a time. Let me start from the bottom, the attitude towards conflict, and move our way up, because the first one is the biggest of all. Start with the attitude towards conflict. There are people who love conflict. I've seen that. But there are many people who fear conflict. And there are many people who take the flight on the very first sight of conflict. Many people don't like conflict. They don't want to be in a conflict scenario. But conflict is not as bad as we think. Many times a conflict is very good. It is healthy. But only the conflict reaches a certain stage, it shows its ugly head. Otherwise, the attitude towards conflict should be positive most of the time. That is one of the challenges. Many people, many team members have fear towards conflict, and that actually works against building an agile team. If we bring an attitude, a positive attitude towards conflict, yes, conflict is good, let's discuss and resolve the conflict, then that's the attitude that we are looking at. That will help us build an agile team. So there are many ways to resolve conflicts. That's a different topic in itself, but I leave it there, and I say that the fear of conflict, the current attitude towards conflict itself, is one of the challenges in building very well formed high performance agile team. Number two, the lack of ownership. This is a new concept. I mean, not entirely a new concept, but most of the team members, this is a new thing because they don't own anything. Probably most of the team members have an idea that I own my piece of code, I own my piece of work, I own only a few pages of documentation. But who owns the project? It is a project manager. So that's the gap here. If there is one person who owns the project and the project results, and there is a problem, that's not normal in agile teams. What is normal, what is acceptable in agile team is the entire team owns the results, which is not quite common today. When you want to build an agile team, the team should take up and accept and commit to the ownership and the accountability. So the lack of ownership is one of the challenges. How to bring in the ownership within the people, within the team members, is the real challenge. And then, number one, we'll talk about the first one, the trust deficit. It's a big thing. How to build trust within the team. Whether team members trust one another, whether the team trusts their management, whether the management trusts their team, whether the team trusts the customer, or on the other way, the customer trusts the team. And the equation runs across all directions. And each relationship between two parties is two-directional. It's back and forth. It's not one way. So creating a trust environment is another challenge. There's a lot of trust deficits within the team. I can quote many examples. I'm sure a lot of you would have gone through scenarios where you would see that one member of the team do not trust the other guy, which is very common, especially when we are working in a distributed environment, where there are teams sitting in one location, there is another team which is sitting in another location, and having a team which is thriving on trust is a big task. It's a tall order. So let's talk more about the trust deficit and look at what is this trust is all about. And there is a very popular book. I'm sure many of us would have seen that book, would have read the book by Stephen M.R. Covey, The Speed of Trust. There's one thing that changes everything is trust. He says that when there is trust, the speed of doing things are extremely different. When trust goes up, speed will also go up and cost will go down. This is from the book The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey. And he also goes on to say the ability to build trust with customers, bosses, co-workers, and subordinates is essential to build success. If you think a little more into what is being said, you can actually take it to the next level. The ability to build trust with your spouse, with your children, with your parents, with your friends is fundamental to your success, personal success. Because trust is one thing that can change everything, as they say. What is so different about trust. When there is trust within the team, there are a lot of things that just dies down. There is an understanding, there is an implicit acceptance that everybody does their best and everybody is working towards everyone else's success, and that feeling itself is sufficient to increase the performance of the teams. You can take the examples that we see on today's environment in the be it cricket, be it in tennis, the kind of trust deficit within the team. Even the recent developments that we see in tennis and cricket shows very clearly there is trust deficit within the team, and obviously that's going to impact. Having a trust within the team is essential and it is fundamental for performance. The ability to build trust with customers, bosses, co-workers, and subordinates is essential to business success. Again, this is from Stephen M.R. Covey. Now let me give you some of the good practices in building agile teams. And this is from one of the white papers that I have written. I looked at what we can do to build an agile team. What are the good things or good practices that we can do to build an agile team? Then I come up with two essential aspects. One is the team values, other one is operating principles. The first and foremost important thing is team values. The team should have certain values in them, and these values are imbibed, cultivated within the team. It's not something that you can actually train people on. People should have these values. People should possess these values. I've identified three values: respect, openness, and courage. If you look at values of Scrum, if you look at the values of extreme programming, you will find a lot of similarity: respect, openness, courage. Every team member should respect everyone else. There has to be a culture of transparency within the team, and people should have courage. These are the fundamental team values. And if you have these values inbuilt in a team, when I say a team, it includes the development team, the management, and the customer. That's the first level of success. Once we have achieved these team values, we can look at the operating principles. Operating principles are something that we can actually see happening on the project floor, and the team members will be behaving based on these principles. Some of the principles are shared vision, self-directed, self-organizing, in other words, collaboration, learning to grow, team before self, and finally celebrate. This is my list. Here I'm going to discuss just two aspects, not all of them. I just picked two aspects, one from the value, one from the operating principles, and if we combine these two, we'll probably get the solution to our puzzle. So let's start with the team value, and then we'll move on to the operating principle. I'm going to pick respect from the team value and collaboration from operating principle. Let's start with respect. If there is one thing that builds trust within the team, it is respect. I will give you an example. I recently attended a seminar where I was an invited speaker, and I was talking on a topic. After my talk, there were a few other speakers. When they started talking, one of the speakers said, somebody who spoke before me talked about servant leadership, and that somebody is me. I know that. And then after an hour, there was another speaker who came on board, and he said, when Ratina talked about Agile, he touched upon servant leadership. And look at the difference between these two statements. Somebody before me spoke about servant leadership versus when Ratina spoke about Agile, he touched upon servant leadership. There is a huge difference in the respect. I mean, it is just not the respect towards me, it is actually respect towards the audience who are listening to them, hundreds and hundreds of them, right? If you have respect, the language changes. If you have respect for your team members, if you have respect for your bosses, if your bosses have respect for you, and if you have respect for customer have respect for you, that builds the trust. Respect is the source, and that's where the whole thing stems from. That's where the whole thing stems from. If there is a lack of trust, that really means that there is no respect within the team. Not everybody is respecting everybody else. That's a given. That's a given. I've experienced in many teams when there is no respect within the team members behave in a way where they will look as if they are busy, but no work will get done. They'll be busy all the time, but productivity or the results will be very less. So that's one of the indication or one of the sign of no respect situation. The other thing, the one thing that changes ordinary performance to a superlative performance is collaboration within the team. And obviously, trust and respect is necessary values that take you into the operating principles of collaboration. Here I want to compare collaboration with the competition. Traditionally, all of us are pitted against each other within a team, because there are situations, there are measurements which seeks to pick one person who is the best among the rest, the best programmer or the best performer, the best extra miler award, and so many other things. All of them, all of those rewards, all of those recognitions are pitting one person against the rest of the people. So it's basically a competition. In competition, there is one guy wins and the rest of the guys lose, and that's why it is called a competition. Olympics, there are only 3 people who win with 3 medals, and the rest of them lose. So that is why it is a competition. But in a team scenario, we don't want competition. We want collaboration. In collaboration, there are only 2 results. 1, everybody wins. 2, on the other case, everybody fails. There is no one person winning, the rest of them losing. We want to build a collaborative environment. We want to have collaboration within the team. How it is possible? Obviously, the team values, respect is important, the trust is important, but beyond that, the environment in which the team works should help, should assist, enhance in collaboration. Otherwise, collaboration is not going to happen. Collaborations will die down as quickly as it starts. It is a responsibility of, I would say, starting from the organization, starting from the top management, starting from the people managers, to plan collaborative efforts within the team so that the team works in collaboration. Team does not compete with each other. I understand there are practical scenarios where the competition is required, but collaboration is much more important than the competition. Now, this is my equation. A team which thrives on trust and which works, collaborates, will produce the superlative results that we are talking about. I'm sure all these 3 things are very difficult to measure. Trust, I don't think there is a measurement that I know of, and I don't think there is another metrics or measurement that I know of to measure collaboration either. But all of us are familiar with measuring performance. Edward Deming once said, out of 100 things that matters to an organization, 97% of them are not measurable. Only 3% of them are measurable, things that matters to an organization. So performance is something that you can measure. How much the team delivers, how quickly they deliver, what is the quality of their outputs. But the ingredients of the performance, if you look at it, the trust and collaboration. Obviously, there are many more factors, but I'm just talking about the big 2 items, the trust and collaboration. It's not measurable. I mean, at least we have not figured out so far how to measure trust and how to measure collaboration. But these two guys are the ingredients and the success recipe for performance. Now, I will give you 3 practical tips that you can go on, experiment, try within your own teams and see how it works. And you can get back to me, you can drop me a mail and share your stories. Number 1, create a culture of mutual respect. Everybody should respect everybody else, and we should understand that every one of us has certain strengths, certain weaknesses. There is no one who has no weaknesses. Essentially, that is one of the reasons why we work as a team. Otherwise, every individual is a team by himself or herself. We work as a team because there are certain weaknesses that we have which will get nullified by someone's strength in the team. So that's one of the reasons. So when you build a team, please take care. You create a culture of mutual respect. How do you do that? Maybe come up with ground rules for your team. Come up with an operating procedure for your team. Come up with certain behavioral aspects within your team. You say certain things are accepted within the culture, certain things are not accepted in the culture. So you have to spell out very clearly. You have to help the team to come up with the list of items that helps them to create a culture of mutual respect. That's number 1. Number 2, award team achievements, not individual achievements. Individual achievements have shown place. Yes, we want to recognize those individual achievements, but more importantly, award and reward, appreciate and reward team achievements. Your team goals are at a higher level than individual goals, and this is something that anybody can do. Any organization, any team can actually come up with their own ways of rewarding and recognizing team achievements. And number 3, this is primarily coming from leadership perspective. Practice servant leadership. Servant leadership is a concept in itself, and I have given a talk in various forums on servant leadership. In short, a servant leader is someone who serves the people first, and then through the service he attains the leadership position. I mean, it's a philosophical thought, and people may have questions. People may think how it is possible. Is it possible? First of all, it's good to listen to all these kind of nice to listen stories. Is it really practical? I would like you to go and look at the vision statement of Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines, their leaders, their CXOs follow servant leadership, and their vision statement reflects that. I mean, it's not that difficult, or it's not that difficult as many of us perceive. It is possible to practice servant leadership. If you try and experiment to practice servant leadership, I'm sure you'll be able to see the success. These are some of the practical tips that I want to leave you with. Now, I come to the last portion of our talk. Albert Einstein said, to break a mental model is harder than splitting an atom. Which is harder, splitting an atom or breaking mental model of people? And obviously it is the latter. Breaking the mental model of people is harder. And all of us have experienced it. Changing an organizational culture is very difficult. Changing a team culture is difficult. Changing individuals' ideologies is difficult. It's hard actually. It's really hard. But that's exactly what we are talking about. We have to change our mental model from competition to collaboration, from mistrust to trust, then from, I mean, if we take care of these two aspects, collaboration and the trust, we don't need to worry about the performance aspects. Performance will come, and that performance will be superlative performance. There is no doubt in that. So the challenge in front of us is not just, it's actually not building agile teams. The challenge in front of us is changing or breaking our mental models towards competition, collaboration, mistrust, and trust. And thereby the performance will obviously change to superlative performance that we desire to have. And finally, I would like to give you a challenge. You can do this challenge with a team of 10 people, and the goal is pass the ball from one person to another to all the 10 people, one after the other, and bring the ball back to the first person. And the goal is to do it in the shortest possible time. What do you think would be the shortest possible time to pass the ball from one person to another person for 10 people and back to the first person? So obviously we can imagine your mental model. People probably will be standing in circles, ball will be get passed on from one person to another, back to the first person. What is the shortest possible time do you think? 24 seconds? Probably that's the first attempt. But if we give them if you place the trust on the team and let the team collaborate, you will see a different result. And I want you to take up this challenge and try in your own teams. You can take a small ball and take up this challenge, and I guarantee that you will be in for a surprise, like I was in one of my sessions. People come up with patterns, people come up with ideas, people come up with executions which will surprise us. And the number 24 seconds is too far. And I just leave it to you to find out what is the shortest possible time to do this challenge. So with that, I close my talk, and then we will probably go for the question and answer. Yep, there are many questions that I see which is coming up on the screen, which are asked by people. So what I will do is I will read one question at a time, and I also read the name of the person who was asked about the question. So then we will take up the questions. I see quite a lot of questions on the screen. Okay, this is one question. How does Agile address or tackle the impact of attrition in team? That's a question, yes. How does Agile address or tackle the impact of attrition in a team? Agile teams does go through attrition, they have attrition, but in general, Agile teams will have less attrition than the regular teams, precisely for the reason that there is trust, there is respect, and there is recognition to what people do. And people take pride, Agile teams take pride in what they deliver. But when people leave, obviously the Agile team's velocity drops down. And we can obviously build redundancy in the team. We can actually plan for another resource coming to the Agile team immediately. We know one person is about to leave, and we can plan for managing the shock. But we cannot avoid leaving the team, dropping the velocity. There will be a little bit of drop in the team's velocity. When there is a new person joining the team, a old person leaves the team composition is different. The team has to go through a complete cycle of forming, norming, norming, and performing cycle. I mean, there is no two way about it. So one way Agile teams manage this is to build very collaborative, open environment where people share all the information with the rest of the people. When someone leaves, there is no fear of people losing the knowledge, and there is no fear of the team getting handicapped, because everybody in the team knows all the facts. And you need to definitely bring in new people who are capable, who are competent, who can actually deliver the results. So that's my way of looking at or answering this question. This question has come from Achut Nayak. Okay, now there is another question. This question is from Venkatraman Sairam. he asked how organizational processes like performance management system work with respect to agile teams. Who does they prioritize? Does the normal industry practice such as fitting into bell curve still apply to agile teams? That's a beautiful question because this is one of the questions that I'm always asked in all my sessions. Whether, I will rephrase the question, what happens to performance appraisal? Whether agile teams will go through a special performance appraisal process, whether the bell curve is applicable to them or they are outside the bell curve. The answer is simple. I already said in one of the discussion points, agile teams are very well within the organization boundaries. So agile teams are within the bell curve. If you want to take them out of the bell curve, it's up to the organization's decision. But it is possible that we can keep the agile teams within the bell curve. It is also possible to perform the review process, the performance review process as we normally do it, and the appraisal is done by the people managers and the team. I mean, we have to think differently. We cannot keep the same old paradigm and expect new results. We need to think differently. We need to come up with new paradigms if we want new results. So obviously, to answer your question, Venkatraman, one, performance appraisal system work with agile teams just like any other way. So the people manager and the team are responsible for appraisal, and bell curve certainly is applicable to agile teams. Because obviously, you know, the organizational constraints why there are bell curve. I mean, why people follow the practice of bell curve, and we cannot break the bell curve. If somebody can break the bell curve, there are examples where people have come out of the bell curve, but they are very, very few. They are probably, I would say, outliers as of today. They are not the common examples. But in general, yes, normal, the standard industry practice of bell curve can be still applied to agile teams. Only thing is, every organization have to think differently, come up with a new paradigm, and that's where the secret is. Let me move on to the next question. Srinivas, this question is from Srinivas. He is asking multiple questions in the same text. For an organization which intends to go agile, is there an ideal approach of transitioning or orienting the people? Answer is yes. For an organization, for any organization which like to go into agile, they need to transition into agile way of doing things, and they have to orient the people completely in a new way of working, because we may not have the desired behavior within the traditional teams. If the traditional teams have the same behavior like what we discussed, trust and collaboration, it's so much easy. But if it is not the case, we have to have a separate orientation. This is one of the things that I do as part of my consulting work, where I work with organizations to build their teams to work in an agile way, to produce results in an agile way. And I also help the organizations to come up with a modified performance appraisal process, which is very much within the bell curve of the organization. So yes, the answer is yes. We need to have a different approach towards transitioning the team as well as the people. And the question is, are there any measures which determine whether a project is better agile rather than follow a traditional life cycle? If I understand this question, what you're asking me is there any way I can measure a project is done or they have transitioned into agile in a better way? The answer is very simple. I mean, the moment a project has become agile and if they are doing agile in the right way, you will see the results coming up in a regular fashion, and the team will behave a different way, where you will see a lot of celebration, a lot of positive environment, a lot of energy within the team, and everybody in the team will be helping each other. In fact, I have written an article, the 9 characteristics of typical agile teams. One of the characteristics is learning as they go forward. Everybody in the team will be interested and keen for other people's learning. So that is one of the aspects. Even if you actually look at the servant leadership concept, whether an agile team is following servant leadership, how do we find out? Very easy way of figuring out is when you have a discussion with one of your team member and you come out of the discussion, be it your manager, be it your customer, what is the feeling you come out with out of the conversation? Is it fear or hope? If you have fear, confusion, skepticism, that's not agile. If you have hope, if you have a lot of positive thinking, then we are doing agile the right way. So doing agile is easy, and people can actually get started with Scrum or any other model, but becoming agile and being agile is extremely difficult. But then once you do that, it's well worth the effort. And I'll move on to the next question. This question comes from Surya. He asks, in a typical scenario in the industry, one does not have a choice to choose the team members for the project, and there is no guarantee that these members have the qualities like respect, openness, courage, and all those things that we discussed. Does this mean that the project will not succeed? Not necessarily. The project will still succeed, as we are seeing nowadays. A lot of projects, I mean, in our experience, be it service companies, be it product companies, most of the projects are successful with our own definition of success. Very few projects, we categorize them as failures. But my question is different. Whether we are seeing superlative performance, whether we are seeing people are delivering to the fullest capability or capacity, that's the question. It's not that whether the team is winning, the team is succeeding, the project is successful. That's a very narrow way of looking at things. Actually, if you look at it from the wider perspective, whether the team is delivering superlative performance, whether every individual, everyone in the team is delivering to their full capacity. If that is the question, and you know the answer. Yes, I agree. In industry scenario, we may not have the choice to pick the team members, and we may not have the guarantee that the team members that come and join our team will have the required qualities. But I will put it this way. Everybody, every living human being has the quality inbuilt in them. But most of the time, because of the environment, it is dormant within the team. I would actually like to quote one of the lean principles. The number one lean belief is, there is no problem with the people, there is problem with the system. If you want to improve the system, if you want to improve the results, go fix the system, not the people. That's the fundamental lean principle. That's the same thing applicable to your question also. And there is a question from how to motivate team members without rewards and recognition. This question is from Rohit and Gar. This is a wonderful question actually. Rewards and recognition is not the only way to motivate people. Yes, it motivates people. There's no doubt about that. But there are other ways to motivate people. Some of the ways I touched upon indirectly, not explicitly. Rohit, one of the things is respect people. People love to work in a place where they are respected. Number two, trust people. Number three, give them freedom. If you go with the philosophy of Daniel Pink, who is one of the modern motivational gurus, he says autonomy, purpose, and commitment in people. These are the three things that Daniel Pink says which will motivate people. So there is a lot of theory around motivation, but rewards and recognition alone is not sufficient to motivate people. That is guaranteed. So there are many other ways to motivate people. Next question is, what is the role of project manager in Agile when you have Scrum Master or a coach? This is from Basavaraj. Okay, there are multiple ways to look at it. A project manager's role typically does not exist in a Scrum environment. So all the project management activities are shared by the Scrum team, the development team, and the Scrum Masters and the product owner. But there are certain scenarios where you may want to keep a project manager to handle the other organizational requirements like budgeting, managing the people aspirations, making sure that people's career growth, people's training and growth aspects are taken care. So there are certain aspects, there are certain items that a project manager still continue to own and continue to do that type of work. But the role of project managers, as we see in a traditional project management, is no longer going to be there in an agile environment. In agile environment, the role of project manager is very, very narrowed down because most of the project management work has been distributed across the team. So the best ideal scenario is there is no project manager, but to carry out a lot of organizational activities, we still need a project manager who may do the role of people manager as well as some of the role of sponsors. What if, there is another question from Roshan. Roshan asks, what if a team depends on one individual more, hence he gets more hike, therefore he does not share that knowledge? What tips do you suggest other team members to survive? I'm just trying to figure out the question. He says, what if the team depends on one individual member and he gets the hike and he does not share the knowledge with the team? What tips do you suggest to the other team members to survive? Simple answer. That this team that we are talking about is not cross-functional. The entire team depends on one individual to perform, and everybody is in a take mode, not give and take mode. It is only taking, somebody is going to give, and that's a very dangerous situation in an agile team. That's not acceptable. Basically, you need to change the composition of the team. Otherwise, you are at the mercy of the individual, and that's not what we want to have. That's not a good experience in an agile team. Can you suggest some of the popular leaders who have shown servant leadership so that we can understand better about that? This question is from Muva Satyanarayana. Okay, I will give you a couple of hints. To start with, we can take the example of Mahatma Gandhi. In our history, there were no incident where we have seen Mahatma Gandhi as a leader, as a autocratic kind of leader. He basically wanted to serve people, and we treat him as our leader. So that is one example. There are many other examples in the history. Actually, the servant leadership concept has come all the way from Chanakya's time, 400 BC. It is not something new. In 1970, Robert Greenleaf has brought out the servant leadership concept and made it as a modern thought process. But we have enough material, enough literature in our scriptures going as back as 400 BC in Arthashastra, where they talk about a king is a paid servant for the citizen, for the people. So we can take many examples from our kings, and in the modern world, the CEOs of companies like Stardust, companies like Southwest Airlines, companies like Nestle are trying to follow the servant leadership. If you want specific examples, you can go to the Greenleaf Foundation websites, and you can look for examples there, or you can go to Southwest Airlines website into YouTube, where there are a lot of videos uploaded from Southwest Airlines themselves. Some of their leaders, their CXOs are talking about how they are practicing servant leaders. So that's the pointer for you to take it forward from there. There are many more questions. I will take about another 3 questions before I close on. There are questions where people are asking about which is the best agile book, which is the best Agile certification? Should I do ACP, Scrum Master? I'm ignoring all these questions. I'm sorry, folks. You can drop me a mail to my email ID, which is on the screen. You can send these questions. I'll be happy to answer these questions offline, because I'm going to pick up those questions which are very relevant to the point of discussion that we are having today. Is Agile principle applicable only to software industry? Question from Vivek Srivastava. No, Agile is not a software industry specific phenomena. It is industry agnostic. We can apply various Agile principles in many other industries. In fact, one of the Agile methodology called Lean has evolved from manufacturing. It is not from software industry. Now it is being applied on software industry. So the answer is no. Agile principle is not applicable only to software industry. It is applicable to product development industry, be it hardware, software, any kind of product development industry, and even service industry. So there are a lot of questions on servant leadership. Could you explain the concept of servant leadership? As I suggested, please go and look for servant leadership as a keyword in Wikipedia. You will get many more links to take it forward. This is not new concept, as I already said. This is a question asked by Subramani, but it is coming up again in a new package to us, to IT industry probably. But that's a good concept. That's a good thing that we can adopt. If there is no hierarchy to move up, doesn't motivation of team members come down in the absence of opportunity to move up? Well, this question is from Kapil. Kapil, the answer is no hierarchy doesn't mean that there is no opportunity to move up. In your perception, moving up is you are thinking in terms of promotions in your organizational roles. I mean, typically, if you keep a keen eye on how the industry is evolving, organizations are becoming flatter. I'm sure you have noticed that by now. Going forward, also organizations are going to become much more flatter. So organizations are going to have very few rungs in the ladder of movement. But for me, a real growth is if you can perform a higher role, higher responsibility, and deliver higher results, is what matters. It doesn't matter what is your expertise, what you do, how you do, can you take up newer challenges, can you grow internally as a person, is more important. So that way this question doesn't make relevance. So somebody can grow and deliver big results, they can grow internally, and then that way they can take up newer challenges. Obviously, they are growing. It's not necessarily that organizations have to put them at a CXO level or nothing like that. Another question, Agile teams have to be cross-functional. It automatically implies that team member must be senior, experienced enough to be part of the team in the first place. And does that mean Agile teams must be experienced than the normal project teams? No, the answer is not that. I don't know. This is again a misconception. Cross-functional does not mean the team members need to be senior or experienced. That's not the case. A person who is not senior but who knows the thing can also be a good fit for a cross-functional team. All we are saying is someone who has the competency to deliver. Competency and the number of years of experience are two different things. A person with 1 or 2 years of experience can have the competency, the required competency. A person with 10 years of experience may not still have the expected competency. So that's a scenario. So I want to answer it that way. So there is no direct relation between cross-functional teams and the experienced team. But when you ask about maturity, I would agree. Yes, people need to be more mature. And in current scenario, in the current world, most of the adults are mature. Does it also imply that ROI on team members can be achieved only so much later? So your question gives me a thought process that a guy who comes out of the college, who gets graduated and joins a company, there is no ROI from that individual. We have to wait for the individual to become a cross-functional person. Once he becomes more experienced, only then we can get return on investment from the guy. So that's the premise with which your question is coming. As I said again, I've already pointed out, there is no connection between the number of years of experience and what the person can contribute. People with zero industry experience can actually contribute if we put them in the right environment, if we leave them with the right tool sets. People are capable of delivering. Very important question. Somebody has qualified his one question. I have some team members who are not co-located. Is it advisable to have remote people in team? It's not even a question of whether it is advisable or not. It's more of your choice. Can you do your project without people distributed? If yes, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, there is no choice. You have no choice. And we'll go for one final question. I'm just going through a couple of the questions, and I'll pick one best question which I think is worth discussing, and I can answer the question. Yeah, this is a good question. As Agile is a team concept, team is composed of individuals. There are bound to be differences in terms of performance and individuals. And should that person be penalized if the project is failed? As we are saying that an Agile team is accountable. If the project fails, everyone is accountable for that. This question is from Pratik. Pratik is trying to ask, there are going to be differences in the team's individual's performance within the team. So where are we bringing in the concept of somebody who is performing better, somebody who is not performing as good as the rest of the people? Because if the project is failing, we are going to penalize all the people. Well, it's not that simple as you are asking. There has to be some differentiation in a team. Yes, I agree. If the project fails, the whole team fails. That's ideal. I probably would like to take the example of cricket. Between two teams, let's say India is playing against Australia. India has lost the match, but still one of the Indian player can win the man of the match award. That's how it is. So we have to look at it from that perspective. When the team loses, you have lost the match, but you still have an option to go and pick up your man of the match award because you have played a better part in the today's game or given game. So I mean, this is a little tricky when you want to implement it in an organization, and that's exactly where I say that that's exactly where I help organizations to build agility in their culture. It's easier said than done. I agree with that part, but in my opinion, it is really worth putting in that effort to create a superlative performance team, high performance agile team, which are delivering the results. And in my opinion, that is the solution. This is my perspective, and that is how I see we can solve the problem of people and performance. With that question, I would like to wind up the session. I would like to thank each and every one of you who are online for listening to me all the while, and it's a wonderful opportunity. It's my pleasure having you all here. Thank you very much. Over to the organizers.
Well, thanks for the insightful presentation, Mr. Rathina. The session on solving people and performance puzzle in agile teams was great. I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of this webinar will be available on techgeek.com by today evening. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Hello, Monica.